Looks like the big clouds went away today, and I think they're giving us heat wave warnings again for next week or so. Let's see if that's going to come again and whether or not people are going to be asking for the rain to come back. And what was going on today? Some trouble over in the islands. Apparently this one dealt with a story where they were warning people don't fly your drones near mammals and all that, because I guess it's one of those stories where they say it could give them like a heart attack and all that, etc, etc. This one here says, DFO reminds drone users to stay away from marine mammals. Fisheries and Oceans Canada is reminding BC residents to avoid flying drones near marine mammals, a potentially harmful activity being seen more frequently. Under the federal marine mammal regulations, it is illegal to approach marine mammals with an aerial drone at an altitude below 1,000 feet, about 304 meters, within half a nautical mile, about 926 meters. Flight maneuvers, including taking off, landing, or altering course or altitude, are also not allowed near them. Despite these prohibitions, the department is receiving increasing reports of drones approaching marine mammals, said Dustin De Gagne, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, fishery officer with the Whale Protection Unit, in a phone interview. Imagine that actually in a practical sense, because actually there were a lot of videos of whales and stuff being captured around the shoreline. They were published in news reports. People loved it. It's like, wow, look at that. Like, they're so far away, they're so high in the air and they don't care. But actually that was the controversy, because you had some, I guess, quote experts saying, no, the drone that's that high, for example, like 60 meters in the air, 80, it gives them like distress and all that. And that would be the argument. You would think, what? How does that cause distress when it's all the way up there? Yet this boat is like going by it, like that's okay? And this person says, especially during COVID, we've seen an increase in the amount of Vancouver Island residents using drones, and it's becoming one of our most common violations that we're seeing here in the South Coast, said De Gagne. The department has received 20 occurrences of marine mammal harassment and disturbance involving drones since 2020, of which about half happened this year. That's kind of questionable too, because they even say in this article, so to speak, it says it may be a harmful activity. It really depends on how you're using and what. Because to say they're all, I guess, harassing in that sense, how do you know when they're that high up in the air? And think about this quote here. It says, quote, the science is indicating that with the use of drones, depending on the distance, type, and other variables at play, there's a high likelihood of disturbance or harassment to marine mammals, he said. This is just one or more variables that could adversely affect them. I mean, I even said it myself, it depends on what you're using and how. So even with this, it sounds like they're uncertain whether or not it actually, quote, I guess you could say, affects them. Although I would think from a common sense point of view, if someone is really that high, flying, I don't know, something like a Mavic or something like that, is that really going to disturb it versus, let's just say, a boat going around the area? Because to my understanding, whales communicate through like what, sound waves or something like that through the water, don't they? So wouldn't a boat actually disturb them way more? Like there's more likelihood it will than a drone flying, again, like say 60 meters in the air or something like that. And then this part made me think, is this story related to that other one where they used a drone to actually save, like the whale? It says 2 instances of illegal drone flights have also hindered efforts by the departments to help entangled humpback whales. In one case, a DFO surveillance aircraft was attempting to photograph a whale entanglement for on-the-water responders when they had to cut short their efforts after encountering an illegal drone in their airspace. And recently, an illegal recreational drone interfered with a DFO authorized drone engaged in conducting aerial assessment of another entangled whale. That's 2 completely different topics there. It's one thing if someone's literally getting in the way, like they're flying right up to your drone and so forth, then you would agree, like stay out of it, let them do their job. But at the same time, that doesn't make sense. If you're flying your own drone there, you say it gives them like a heart attack and all that, then you shouldn't be doing it as well. It doesn't make a difference in that sense, in my opinion. They do mention too, because they're getting more phone complaints, that more people are aware of things like, I guess, regulations and all that. But honestly, I would think it's just due to hysteria, where there's a lot of people who just hate it in general. If they see it, they're gonna phone in, just like all those stories of, I guess, residents or whatever, or anyone who sees a drone up in the air phoning 911 thinking it's spying on them, even though it's completely ridiculous with how high it's in the air, according to like a lot of people. Like, good luck seeing anyone with that consumer drone. They're gonna be like a dot or something. Because I would ask too, what exactly type of scientific study did one do to conclude, again, a drone, let's just say a modern day one, those consumer ones, being flown, let's just say 80 meters in the air actually gives that whale distress. Because it reminds me of that topic before where people talked about how drones around a bear gives them a heart attack. I mean, look at all the headlines and stuff like this one here. Bear gets stressed by drones. Don't like drones in your backyard? Neither do black bears, study finds. And even more, drones increase heart rates of wild bears. Too much stress? And in many cases, I think the only study they actually did in terms of actually attaching stuff to a bear to monitor it and all that, afterwards this study here says, study finds bears react, then habituate to drones. Basically, they get used to it afterwards. It says a research team tested whether black bears would habituate to the repeated presence of drones flying overhead, and if so, whether they would remain habituated to additional flights conducted after a break. And really think about this point. It says the bears showed an increased tolerance to drone flights in the short term, which they maintained after a nearly 4-month pause. To me, that is common sense because it really comes down to what you're using and how, and as well whether or not the animals are actually used to their environment or whatever it is around them. I use the examples again, kind of like say a geese, like a Canada one. Most people are terrified of it, say, oh, stay away, it's gonna hiss at you, charge at you, especially if there's babies, it's gonna attack you. But you guys even see it, I walk right up to it. Why? Because they're used to a person like me and the environment and all that. That's what it should come down to in terms of real studies. If you're gonna create regulations and laws in these ways, they have to be based on real scientific studies and data, in my opinion, not just based on hunches, if that's what you want to say. Because I would be inclined to say, especially with things like wildlife research and all that, you're probably doing a disservice to research where there's probably more people flying it, let's just say recreationally, that could capture something by accident. I still remember all those stories, for example, where there were certain whales or something like that. They were wondering all these years why they go to a certain place, and because of a drone capturing it, they find out they go to these rocks and stuff like that, or whatever, they scratch like their backs. Imagine everyone flying like a recreational drone responsibly in that way and discovering stuff like that every single day. And reading this, I wonder if this will create a lot of conflict. It's a complete contrast where yesterday I read that story how in Alberta, they're basically loosening everything, no more mandatory testing or COVID isolation and stuff. But apparently it says Quebec here to implement COVID-19 vaccine passport on September 1st in the face of inevitable fourth wave. Passports will be used for public events, bars, restaurants, and gyms. Quebec's health minister says a vaccination passport system will be implemented on September 1st to combat rising COVID-19 cases and an inevitable fourth wave. It's one of those topics that's really divisive right now. I know just from reading the news, apparently France has something like this as well and is generating mass protests with thousands of people. So let's see what happens, I guess. Alright, see you guys later.